This is week 5. The notes for these classes you can find at theregathering.com/page/PFT Hebrew 1. That'll give you links to notes from this class and all past classes. You can also find recordings of past classes on YouTube at the Passion for Truth video channel of YouTube. So just search on there for Hebrew class and you'll find it. There's also lots of other great videos on there. This is week 5. And we're on to our next letter. Okay, this is a nun. Nun makes the sound of the letter N. So I'll give you the name up here too. Okay, numerical value of nun is 50. The nun has a final form as well. So a regular nun here, and this is a nun sofit, or a final nun. See, it extends below the line of normal writing. This is what contrasts it with a vav. Okay, a vav would be the height of a regular nun. A final nun would extend below the line. Nun sofit, yes. Sofit would be Hebrew for final. So, yeah, nun sofit, or final nun. So at the end of a word, you write a nun like this. In any other place in a word, it's written like this. In Paleo-Hebrew, the nun looks something like that. Of course, there's different variations. The meaning is thought to be like a sprout or a seed. And this became the Greek nu, which became, or Latin and English, N. So, just like in Hebrew, we've got Yud, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun. That corresponds to our J, K, L, M, N in English. Or iota, kappa, lambda, mu, nu in Greek. Okay? Any questions about the nun? All right. Our next letter is Samech. Okay. Samech makes the sound of the letter S. Numerical value is 60. And the Samech looks very much like a final mem. In fact, the two are, in certain fonts, are almost indistinguishable from each other. Of course, you'll never see a final mem anywhere other than the end of a word, so that's one way of definitely telling them apart. But there are some words which end in a Samech, and that can lead to a little bit of confusion. One thing you will notice, even in the texts that are the most confusing, is that a final mem is always totally flat across the bottom. It'll be flat and basically have, they won't be as exaggerated of corners as I have here, but it'll basically have 2 corners on the edges. A Samech will always have at least one rounded edge on this bottom. And I like to exaggerate the difference so that there's never any question when I'm writing something. And there are a number of fonts that do the same thing for clarity. But yeah, this is the biggest confusion you might run into with the Samech, is confusing it with the final mem. But like I say, pay attention to that. Just to the bottom edge of it, on the mem, it should be very, very flat, very square looking. The samech should be a little more rounded. Okay, our script for a samech looks very different than the Paleo script. That's what samech looked like before. The Hebrew word samach means to support. And so it's thought that this could be either a walking stick, like something that supports you, or a rib cage. Okay, a supportive structure in your body. The samech became the Greek xi, which I am forgetting how to draw right now. I believe, yes, thank you. Okay, yes. Thank you very much. Sorry, I had my first child on Monday, so I'm a little bit sleep deprived. I didn't have the child, my wife did, but it hasn't assisted my sleep any either, although she's definitely taken the brunt of it. So, but she's doing well, and my daughter's doing well too. So, but anyway, so I apologize for my lack of wits today, but anyway, a Greek xi looks like this. And I don't believe that there is a Latin equivalent for this letter. You could maybe creatively kind of make that into an S, but I actually think that the S came from the sigma, which is a different Greek letter. So I don't believe this has an English equivalent, but either S or X is a possibility. Okay. Now if I introduce a new vowel, this represents any letter. And this vowel is two dots side by side underneath the letter. Okay. This vowel is called a tsera. And I don't believe that there is a correct English spelling of that. But the tsera makes the sound of long A, which you could write as A-Y, A. So, using a nun with a tsera underneath it, followed by a samech. Right? This would be pronounced the N of the nun, A of the tsera, and the S of the samech. So nes, nes. And nes is a miracle. You also see it transliterated in English as just N-E-S. So in Hebrew, they're not talking about the Nintendo Entertainment System. It is nes, which is a miracle, which the NES is not. So, all right, any questions about the samech?
I have a question.
Yes.
The sonnet, does it make the same sound as the shin?
Okay, does the samech make the same sound as the shin? When we get to the shin will actually make two different sounds. It makes an SH sound and it makes an S sound. And the S sound that the samech makes is identical to the S sound that the sin makes. So yes, they'll make the same sound in those situations. In fact, you'll find won't, when we get there, you'll be able to see the contrast, but there are actually some words in the scriptures that are spelled interchangeably. Sometimes they're spelled with a samech, and sometimes they're spelled with a sin. It's not real frequent, but it does happen. Okay? My theory is that the scribe misspelled it. And of course, but when all you have is the scriptures, you don't know which scribe misspelled it. So certain spellings are very standardized. So, certain things, it's like it's always a sin or it's always a samech. But there are a few words where you'll see it both ways. And I chalk that up to just being a misspelling, but maybe there's something deeper to it. I don't know. But I'm sure, you never know how things like that can pan out. In the future, you may find somebody spelling our president's name Barrack when it's actually only one R. And, there should be enough official documentation for people to realize how it's actually spelled, but I'm sure it's happened enough that a historian looking back would be a little confused at first. Well, which one is it? Or are they interchangeable? Does he sign his name randomly with one R or two? So, but weird things like that happen through history. So that's my idea. But you never know. With the scriptures, you never know about those things. There could always be something deeper. Because the scribes were very meticulous about how they did things, and so those kind of mistakes are rare.
And you know what? Since you got on that little rabbit trail, that used to give me a really, really big hang-up. When you be reading, you see the names and they have a different spelling. I guess it's a different person or it's the same person.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had to tell myself, it's not about the person, it's about what was done.
Right.
So more like just read it.
Right, yeah. In different genealogies especially, you'll find variant spellings. Because, there are other texts that we don't have included in the scriptures that were just lists of genealogies, records of things that were done. In fact, the scriptures refer to them oftentimes, and they actually refer to them as sort of a source of authority. Isn't this written in the records of the kings of Judah? You go, where are the records of the kings of Judah, Or the book of the wars of the Lord is another common one that I'd love to see sometime, because the Torah references the book of the wars of the Lord. And some people suspect that maybe it's Joshua, but the things that are quoted from it are not contained in Joshua. So it's like, man, that would be amazing, because it's another record of that whole time period that for some, that's lost, or that if anyone knows where it is, they're keeping it a good secret right now. So, going between texts and, sometimes I'm sure people would be doing things off memory, writing things off memory rather than copying directly from a text. And so little things get mixed up here and there, especially in genealogical records and things of that nature. And they didn't have spell check back then, which who knows if that's a good thing or bad. But but like I say, those situations are rare. Even though you do encounter them, you do notice them when you come across them, but they are quite rare. So their efforts, to preserve things as accurately as possible were very effective. All right, our next letter is the ayin, which you could spell like this. All right, the ayin is the most difficult letter to pronounce. And the sound it makes is very subtle, and it has kind of become relegated to a silent letter now. Most dialects and most people simply pronounce the ayin just like an aleph. They just consider it to be a silent letter. The sound that it did make, though, and that still does, but it's very subtle. It's very difficult to write. We don't have an equivalent sound in English. Kind of like the chait, we don't have an equivalent sound in English, but this is the chait you can master, fairly quickly with enough practice and enough towels. But the the ayin, though, the sound it makes, the best approximation I can give would be an ng at the end of a word, like at the end of the word long. It's kind of like, but you have to make that sound at the beginning too. So it's kind of like you're swallowing your tongue. It's a very subtle guttural sound, and it's easy to see why it's becoming silent. Number one, it's hard to pronounce, and number two, it's a very subtle sound. I don't know if people online can even hear what I'm doing. But anyway, it's very interesting, though, because the ayin, as it is, begins a number of words that in English we transliterate with the G. So if anyone's familiar with the Gaza Strip in Israel, okay, Gaza is a very ancient name, but it's not Gaza, it's Gaza, okay? So that would be, all right, or Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, it's not Gomorrah, it's Gomorrah. Okay, it's that swallowing your tongue sound. If we were to transliterate it using the pronunciation of the ayin we have today, it would just be A-M-O-R-R-A-H. Right? We wouldn't even have a G at the beginning because it's such a subtle sound that's really disappearing. Also, just a little side note, Yeshua, that name ends in an ayin. So there's actually a subtle sound at the end of the name. So it's Yeshua, except I'm belaboring it a little bit. If you're used to saying it, then all the time it just kind of comes right out. But anyway, so it won't bother me a bit if you pronounce the ayin as just like the aleph, because that's what everybody else is doing. But I think it is good to know that the sound was original, because it tells you about things like Gaza. So then when you read the scriptures, you go, why are they spelling this with a G when it starts with an ayin? Well, that's why. Because the sound originally was sort of a third, a quarter of a G, however you would describe that sound. I do like preserving the ending, the guttural sound at the end of words, only for the sake of one word in particular, because it sounds just like an English word that means exactly the same thing when you do that. We'll get to that when we get to the resh. And I'll point that out. But anyway, if you want to consider it silent and don't want to try to master that sound, I will not hold that against you. If you do want to try to master that sound, good luck. I'm still working on it. So yes, the ayin is a mostly silent letter. Numerical value is 70. And in Paleo-Hebrew, the ayin looks something like that. Or sometimes you'll see it as just a round figure. The Hebrew word ayin means an eye, as in the eyes you see with. And so that is a picture of an eye. And interestingly, the ayin became the Greek omicron and the English O. And because its sound is so subtle, it usually sounds mostly like the vowel that's attached to it. So that's why it turned into a vowel in the Greek and in the English. Okay. Any questions about the ayin? Okay.
I was going to ask about backtrack about the sonic real fast.
Okay.
How come sometimes I see it written as a circle? It just kind of doesn't really matter, I guess, how it's written, but sometimes people just do it as a circle.
Okay, so the question is, why is the samech sometimes written as just a circle? In cursive Hebrew, the samech is just written as a circle. There's a whole other script of Hebrew which is cursive, which is much faster to write than, well, for example, the aleph. You know, if you were to write, I write just a stick aleph like this, but if you were to write an aleph in a more proper-looking form, it would be something like this. Which, you know, as nice as that looks, it's going to take a long time to write someone a note saying, you know, please, you know, pick up a frozen pizza from the store. So, and if you speak Hebrew and you need a frozen pizza, you don't necessarily want to, you know, make a masterpiece in order to ask someone to do that. So and if you're not, you know, so a much easier way to write an aleph is to simply do that, which actually looks a lot like the Paleo aleph, and that's where a lot of the inspiration for the cursive script comes from, is the Paleo Hebrew. But anyway, so the cursive for a samech is simply a circle, and that's why you'll see that a lot of times is the cursive script. And also, you know, the circle helps differentiate it from the final mem. If you write samech as a circle and a final mem as a square, you probably won't get them mixed up. So, okay? And actually, I'll give you, go ahead and give you a word using the ayin. If you have an ayin with a patach, followed by a yod, with a chirik, followed by a final nun. Okay, this is pronounced dayin. And it means an eye. Okay, it's the name of the letter, and it means an eye. Pronounced exactly the same as the name of the letter. Oh, that's okay. Hey, come on in. Okay. All right. Our next letter is the pei. Okay. Now the pei makes two different sounds. Remember, the bait with a dagish is a B, and without a dagish is a V. Also the kaf with a dagish is a K. Without the dagish is the ch, just like the chet. Right? The pei with a dagish is a P, and without a dagish is pronounced like an F, or PH. Okay, so the pei makes two different sounds, P and F. And the pei also has a final form. Okay, so pei sofit looks like this. I'm exaggerating the length, but it does extend below the line, just like the final nun and just like the final kaf. Anytime you find a pei sofit, a final pei, it will always be pronounced as an F, because it will never take a dagish. Okay. And again, the final form occurs when it's the last letter in a word. Okay. Numerical value of Pe is 80. And in Paleo-Hebrew, Pe looks something like this. The Hebrew word Pe means a mouth, and that is what this is depicting, is a mouth. Pe became the Greek pi that we all know and love, and that eventually became Latin P. Any questions about the Pe? Okay. And a good Pe word is the name of the letter itself. So a Pe with the dagesh, a segel vowel underneath it, followed by a he, is pronounced Pe, and it means a mouth. Okay. All right, so one thing I'd like to do is kind of go through the alphabet that we've covered so far. Just a quick glance over, so you see them and hear them again. All right, so actually, how about you all say them with me as I write them? Okay, so first, Aleph, okay, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tate, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samech, Ayin, and Pe. We are very close to the end now. Okay. So again with me. Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tate, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samech, Ayin, Pe. All right. Okay, and so far, we've got the Beit that makes a different sound with a dagesh and without a dagesh. We've got the Kaf that does the same thing. The Kaf also has a final form. Okay. The Mem has a final form. The Nun has a final form. And the Pe makes a different sound with or without a dagesh and has a final form. Okay. So we only have one more letter that has a final form, and we are out of letters that change pronunciation with and without the dagesh. So the most complicated stuff is behind us now. And the letters that are the most difficult to pronounce, we've covered both of them, Chet and Ayin. Okay, so we're in the home stretch for the alphabet. Yes, the ayin. Well, it's silent, but it's not. It's fast becoming silent, but it actually makes a very subtle sound, like you're swallowing your tongue. So, yep. So it's responsible for names like Gaza. It's actually Gaza. we were to transliterate it today, we'd probably lose the G in front of it entirely because it's quickly becoming a silent letter. But originally it made that, you know, some portion of a G sound. Okay. Any other questions about any of these letters? Okay. All right. I'll go ahead and put our vowels that we've learned so far up here too. And it's not so important you know the names as you know the sounds. So I'm not going to ask the name. I'll say the name, but what I want you guys to do is tell me what sound these vowel symbols make. So this is a comets. Ah, right? Okay. This is a patach. Ah, right? Just like the comets in our dialect. All right, this is a chirik. Right, short I, like in bit. Okay, a chirik followed by a yod is E, long E. Okay. Upside down pyramid of dots is a segol, and that makes short E, right? A tsera, okay, is A, long A, right? Okay, a cholam, above and to the left of a letter, single dot, is O, long O, that's right. Okay, a cholam with a vav is O, still long O. The vav assimilates into the sound of the vowel. And our last one, a vav with a dot in the middle, is not a dagish but a shuruk. It makes oo, right, long U or OO. Okay? Any questions about the vowels?
Can you repeat the one with I don't know which one it is, that one.
This one here? This is a cholam. Either way, it's a cholam, okay, with or without the vav, and it makes a long O sound either way. So the vav is optional. With the vav is called a full cholam, and without is called a defective cholam. There's nothing wrong with the defective form. It's just missing a vav.
Some are the diagonal three dots. That's still true, right?
The diagonal three? Okay, and this is, we'll cover this again later, but this is called a kibbutz, or a kibbutz, I'm sorry. I keep calling it a kibbutz because I want the first vowel to be right, but it is actually a kibbutz. Kibbutz makes a short U, as in put. Okay. Some dialects it'll make the same sound as the shuruk, but I'm teaching it as in put. This is the least common vowel you'll ever encounter.
So, you're teaching Sephardic, and in the Sephardic that
Yes.
are not the same.
They are different. Yes. Yeah, this is as in put, and this is as in moon. So this is a longer vowel than this. Okay. Any other questions?
Is this the time for you to ask us your information here on this?
I'm sorry?
On this, here, this, I just had a question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
About this. I know we haven't gotten through, but like where it says in the Bible in the Old Testament or in the New Testament in Revelation it says I'm the Alpha and Omega.
Mm-hmm.
It would be. Is that wrong translation? Because what I'm seeing is there's no connection between.
In the Greek of Revelation, it does literally say Alpha and Omega.
Okay.
Okay. Right. The question. Right. The implication, though, since John spoke Hebrew, okay, would be that Aleph and Tav was what was represented, being the first and last letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Even though I don't see the correspondence between the Omega and Tav.
That's what I was.
Yeah, I don't see the Omega as coming from the Tav, but I think that.
Just because it was the beginning and the
the beginning, well, it literally says that too. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. So if it was spoken in Hebrew first, Aleph and Tav would have been the logical letters to use to substitute. But yeah, in the Greek it literally does say Alpha and Omega.
So for them to understand that.
Right. Yeah, for a Greek, for that to make sense to someone reading it in Greek. Like if we said it in English, we'd say the A and the Z. Okay, even though Z didn't come from Tav or from Omega. But if we said I am the A and the O, we go, what are you talking about? And if you'd said I am the Alpha and the Tau, I said they try to spell a word or something with it and go, what is he, this is really mysterious, what's he talking about? But for, Alpha and Omega, first and last. So, yeah, the thought of that being the Aleph and the Tav is just, if there was an original Hebrew text of Revelation, or if you were to translate Revelation into Hebrew, saying the Aleph and the Tav would be the best way to put it.
There's something about the first letter being Aleph, not that it was printed, but that it would have been represented by the inhalation, something Jim.
Oh.
And obviously, Beta was the first letter printed, but in his word.
Okay.
The beginning of his word until the end of his word. So from beginning to end, he is.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things with Aleph and Tav. In fact, when you get into a little bit of Hebrew grammar.
I think it had more to do with Torah than just the alphabet.
Right. Yeah, the Torah doesn't begin with an Aleph, it begins with a Bet, Bereshit, first word of the Torah. It doesn't end with a Tav, though it ends with a Lamed. Yeah, so there's thoughts on why it begins with a Bet as opposed to an Aleph, and there's all kinds of neat little things people talk about with that. But yeah, Aleph Tav itself does spell a letter. Does spell a word. But it's a word that, it spells two words actually. There's et, which is a preposition that means with, but then there's et, which is untranslatable. Yes, it's the direct object preposition. And this Aleph Tav appears everywhere in the scriptures, and it's essentially a grammatical tool, since Hebrew doesn't. Right.
If we translate it.
Right. Yeah, it's a grammatical tool, since Hebrew has no. In English, we rely on word order to construct the meaning of our sentence. So when we say the dog chased the cat, the reason we know it's the dog doing the chasing and the cat being chased is because dog appears before cat in the sentence. The dog chased the cat. In Hebrew, you could have those words in any order. Chased the dog, the cat, chased the cat, the dog chased the cat chased the dog. Okay. Knowing which word is the subject and which is the object, okay, which is doing the chasing and which is being chased, is determined by which word the et appears in front of. So it's extremely important to clarity of translation, okay, especially when you get into certain laws. Is the convict inflicting punishment on the judge or the other way around? It's kind of important to know which way that goes. Right. Yeah, who's chasing who's doing what. It's very important in Genesis 1:1 to know that God created the heavens and the earth, that Elohim created the heavens and the earth, and not the other way around. Without that et, it could be translated either way, which would lead to even more denominations of Judaism and Christianity. So, yes, extremely important word, this. And a lot of people have found ways of tying the meaning of that word to the Messiah. Since since in Revelation he says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, which you could call the Aleph and the Tav. So
maybe he just said beginning and end, and the Greek said Alpha and Omega.
Could be. Yeah, in the verse it says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. So, right. And so it seems that the letters were stated, and if it was in fact Aleph and Tav, then there's all kinds of, go through the scriptures and you can find this Aleph Tav all over the place. So anyway, there's a lot of interesting stuff with that, but it does serve a very very concrete grammatical purpose as well as any symbolic or deeper implications. So, okay.
So that brings order to it otherwise. Pretty
Yes. Yes.
words.
Right. Yeah. Yes. This Aleph Tav word does bring order to sentences. Yeah. There's other languages that do it in other ways. Like Latin uses case endings at the end of words to indicate the subject and the object of the sentence. Latin's the same way as Hebrew, that the words can be in any order in a sentence, but they put different endings at the end of words to indicate what's doing the acting and what's being acted upon. Hebrew doesn't do that. It doesn't have case endings, but it has this et, and there's other tools they use to determine sentence structure. But yeah, order is not so much a part of it. What the order does do in Hebrew is gives emphasis. So whichever word appears at the beginning of a sentence, that word is the word that's sort of emphasized in the sentence. So we do the same thing with voice inflection in English. Okay, the cat chased the dog chased the cat. You know, by emphasizing cat, we're indicating the dog chased the cat instead of, you know, the mouse or the little kid or whatever the case may be. You know, but the dog chased the cat is emphasizing dog. Okay, the dog chased the cat is emphasizing that he chased the cat and didn't play with it or something. Okay, so Hebrew does that in writing by putting that word first.
So it's more like where we have punctuations.
Right, it'd be like us italicizing a word or you know, or online putting it in all caps, I guess. Although some people do that all the time anyway. But yeah, so that's kind of their, because Hebrew has no capital letters and ancient Hebrew has no punctuation. They do punctuate things today because...
Are they similar?
Their punctuation marks? Yeah, they're identical to English punctuation marks now. Modern Hebrew does that because it adds some clarity. And now you won't find, at least I haven't seen, like a Torah scroll or anything like that with punctuation marks in it. Part of that's because there's some places where it's not totally clear where a comma or a period would be. But paragraphs are pretty well defined, though. Just, you know, context tells you a lot. So that's actually kind of how one of the functions of verses, when they started numbering chapters and verses, was to give you places to break the thought. So, any other questions?
I was going to ask about, I got this alphabet thing a while back, but I know that I think it was hers. She's got the 1, 2, 3 on that, the very bottom of the Paleo Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know, I mean, if it's still, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yeah, those, I will talk about those when I get to those letters, and that'll be all clear at that point. Yeah, those are, I've drawn lines on that chart, which I need to upload online. So people online, as of right now, don't know what I'm talking about, but eventually this same chart with the entire alphabet will be here. You'll find it here. I need to upload it. But yeah, at the bottom of that chart, I've got Greek letters and their Paleo-Hebrew equivalent. So I've connected the Paleo-Hebrew ones with the Greek by lines, and then I've got numbers next to letters that indicate ideas that one letter could be related to another, but since they appear out of sequence, it's hard to make that claim confidently. So it's just a guess. But anyway, if those do in fact correspond, then there's only 2 Greek letters that don't have a corresponding Paleo-Hebrew letter. There's 24 Greek letters and 22 Hebrew.
Because I'm looking and see that there's 4, 5. Are these not?
Yeah, if you match the numbers on top with the numbers on bottom, those are
Oh,
possible
those-
links.
okay.
And that'll make a little more sense once I go through more of those letters. But okay, any other questions? All right, Well, we'll call that a wrap. Shalom, everybody, and we'll see you next week.